glad to be here in Singapore. My name is Rick Chen. I'm one of the co-founders here at Pozible.com. We're an Australian-based crowdfunding platform. We've been operating for about 5 years now, so pretty old in that sense. So this particular session that I was assigned is to talk about the future of reward-based crowdfunding, which is a massive sort of hat. Personally, honest, I have no idea where the future is. If I know, I've already made Pozible there, and then I'm going to be a lot bigger than I am now. So I think this session, I wanted to make it a bit more like a sharing session. There are a lot of experts sitting here, and then you all know crowdsourcing, crowdfunding very well. I don't want to throw much of a stats and sort of talking about how big this is going to be the future. But instead, I want to share with you some insight thoughts and some understanding of findings that I found through the 5 years operating a crowdfunding platform. Please feel free to stop me at any stage if you have questions. The organizer want me to make this as interactive as possible, so do pop up questions, please. So quickly. Pozible is founded in 2010 in Sydney, Australia, and up to date, we have hosted 8,451 projects on the website, and our pledge is coming from 104 different countries, and we have a success rate which we are very proud of 57% on the site, compared to Kickstarter's 43%, Indiegogo 9%. I think we did a great job in success rate. And we have raised up to date 27 million in US dollars. In Australia, this is a short overview of what we have achieved. We do a lot of creative arts-based projects, all reward-based, strictly reward-based. We don't do equity crowdfunding at this stage at all. Our top 4 categories are film, music, theater, arts. And the average size of campaign on Pozible goes about 6,000 Australian dollars, which is equivalent of Singapore dollars at the moment. And the 4 most popular pledge amount for Australia are $50, $25, $75, and $100. Compared to the US, which start with $25, I think we Aussies are slightly bit more generous in that sense. Last year, about this time, we entered the Chinese market. Being Chinese myself, I thought it was an advantage of me being understand the market itself, and also with the background of what Pozible has achieved in the Australian market, as well as sort of overseas market, to sort of give it a shot on the Chinese side of the game. Particularly, we are looking to tackle the IoT sort of revolution in China, which is huge at the moment. I don't know if any of you have a good understanding about the IoT revolution in China. I think that is definitely one of the future potential of the Chinese economy when it's shifting from low-quality manufacturing to sort of self-innovative new ideas, heavily based on manufacture powerhouse, which China currently holds. This is Pozible's growth rate last year since last year when we just entered Chinese market. We see a sharp growth of overseas pledges and project numbers. And one thing that's interesting to me is that almost on an average, almost 25% of money that's pledged into Chinese project are not coming from China on Pozible. So they come from the likes of US, Australia, UK, Singapore being one of them as well. So this is one of the things that I think it's interesting, fascinating to me that I wanted to experiment is bringing Chinese project outside on a global stage, see if we can directly interact with audiences outside of China on a personal scale. When it comes to brand companies, the Chinese community are not strange, or they're very familiar with overseas brands. All the luxury goods, you find them everywhere in big cities, probably even more compared to, the likes of Melbourne or Sydney. But when it comes to personal level interaction, there hasn't been a lot of ways that the Chinese audience are able to sort of give it a try of experience it. there's various different reasons for that. I think one of them being the culture difference, language barrier, and also the political sort of environment keep China relatively different from the rest of the world, which also makes the game very exciting. Our first project launched in China in May last year, I believe. It's a smart wristband from Shenzhen, close to Hong Kong. When this project was launched onto the site, they were looking for around $1,600 to put the first initial order of mass production of their products. This project was funded, reached its target in literally 4 minutes on the website, and it almost sent the site to meltdown. And that was the moment that I realized the potential and the difference of the Chinese market and how things are going to work there. Even though being a Chinese myself, I have sort of prepared myself for it. This project has been a very successful one on the site. It raised about $169,000 at the end and pre-sold all that wristband on a global scale, which is exciting for a small company based in Shenzhen that only got like 5 people and to be able to reach on a lot mass scale of a market outside of China. The regulations in China at the moment is kind of really interesting at the same time being weird, because the Chinese government traditionally does not quite like things that work differently from what they understand. And then they would kind of try to set rules and barriers and sort of try to not make it happen. Or like one weird way they tend to do things that I really don't like is the way they work is that they would make it very difficult for you to do business there, and almost to a certain stage that you have to break their regulation rules to be able to operate. And then they will allow you to do that. That's how they want you to do. And in their hand, at the end of the day, they have everyone's bad record if they want to dig into your all sorts of stats. If they don't want to take you down, it's all fine. But if they do want to take you down, you will have something in their hand. So this is a weird approach that kind of scares me quite a lot. That gets even worse when China at the moment is trying to open up. They're trying to embrace the new sort of technology because the government understands itself that the market in China, the sort of low-quality manufacturer is not going to support Chinese economy growth any longer. It's going to start to decline dramatically. The government does not want to get blamed on that. They need China to grow on a vast sort of pace. And the world needs China. If China is not growing, the first country is going to shit ourselves is Australia. We rely on Chinese growth so much that if China stops, Australia is in trouble. And the Chinese government does not want to take blame on that at the moment. So they're vastly encouraging innovation, startup culture, and also launching business in China. So this weird combination with the old way they're doing things makes the current environment working in China very fascinating. Competitions. This is also one of the major reasons for Chinese local startup to fail. It's basically there isn't any existing moral standard on a startup ladder. So any big guys, most of the big guys actually, you name it, Alibaba and Tencent in particular, with a huge amount of empire of QQ, or QQ is built on top of them. What they were doing is sit back, let the small guys to work their ass off and to build a startup company, a model that works, and they will copy it. They will replicate that model in one night, and the second day, they will use their QQ user to crash you, to push out of the market, which is very dangerous and really a lot harsh environment compared to what we sort of studied in Australia, I believe. So that's also one of the reasons that make it difficult. A few stats here. This is the growth of total money that's raised in China, particularly Chinese projects based on all different sort of platforms. You can see a sharp growth here. And this is the standard of how big the Chinese IoT business is going to be in 2020. And that is the growth of the middle class in China. All the cliche, it's big, and we all know that. When it comes to crowdfunding, I think one of the key is in the audience. what sort of audience, what are we trying to do when we launch a crowdfunding campaign? Exactly. 90% of the crowdfunding campaign launched in China are not looking for money at all. China, at the moment, is filled with money. You have an idea, you can go and talk to investors to get a lot of money. They have so much money that I think it's more money floating around than projects at this stage. But audiences are the one that they launching crowdfunding campaign for. They wanted to build an early stage audience that they wanted to sort of show the idea works. Also, they want to test the water, see how people react towards their particular ideas and product. If we sort of divide the audience according to how influential they are and how accurate that particular audience towards your very product is. For example, if I'm building a waistband, you probably want to target people that fit, sort of wants to work, wants to exercise a lot, and wants to monitor their sort of general health stats. If we do that, we have the lower and lower, low and low and high sort of different group of users, and of course we have the two users in the middle. And if we just sort of stretch that into a line, and we get the early adopters, which is a high, and the targeted user, which is the two in the middle. So low and high and low, there's two in the middle. And then we got the low at the very end as the rest. When you do crowdfunding campaign, what you want to target are the people that's the early adopters. That's the one that you wanted to heavily influence and then want to get your product into their hand as much as you can. Because those are the people that's going to sort of, first of all, they will be able to accept the product to start with, and then they will be able to influence the people around them. Quite often, these people are very active on crowdfunding platforms globally, so that's why people use crowdfunding platforms or crowdfunding as a method to tackle down this group of people. In the middle ones, the targeted user, they are normally heavily influenced by the early adopters. They are the people who read the likes of technology media. They're the people who actually want to try different things, but they need some third-party opinions from a friend who knows this space a lot better. These are the people that kind of follow on crowdfunding campaigns. I believe when a campaign goes live, this group of people are playing a key part in the viral phenomenon of a crowdfunding campaign. The rest of them are dead moms. They're not interested in any new technology that Apple and Samsung is raising out at the moment, so you should not be targeting them at all. These people will only buy an Apple iPhone if there's no other options on the market. So they're not your target in general. Quickly about the hardware crowdfunding, which is one of the major spotlight on reward-based crowdfunding on a global scale. Unfortunately, I think it's very badly used. Crowdfunding so far, in terms of hardware, we're really just doing pre-sales. This is use crowdfunding as an e-commerce sort of tool. That's why also a lot of companies these days are not actually launching their product on crowdfunding platforms anymore. They launch on their own website because it's just simply a pre-sales tool. You can build a button, say buy now or pre-order. But the actual situation here is, I believe, if we look at the ways that crowdfunding can achieve or the potential of crowdfunding to be able to bring into the project launch of the platforms, you have the one-way conversation, the two-way conversation. One-way conversation is a traditional e-commerce model. So I build, you buy. You don't have a say about what my product is. All your option is either choose to buy it or not to buy it. But on a two-way sort of conversation is what crowdfunding really is innovative in that field. Because like social media, compare social media to traditional media, TV or radio, they are very, very sort of one-way conversation. You can't talk back. You listen, you watch, and you get whatever information that they tell you. But when it comes to social media, you add a totally different dimension onto that. So anyone can be listening, but also broadcasting at the same time. So that gets the game a lot more spicier. That's what crowdfunding was supposed to do in this field. Crowdfunding is supposed to add a different dimension onto whatever you're building to allow your audience to be part of whatever you do. But at the moment, the hardware saying, in general, for crowdfunding, is not very greatly used from my point of view. If that's a failure of ownership, I think we're somewhere here. There's a lot more way to improve this. However, when we look at the life cycle of a hardware products, from the idea stage to prototype to small batch and to mass productions, there's a reason for why this is not working, and also a reason that currently it's a huge problem for every crowdfunding platform that's hosting these campaigns. This is the time normally they get onto crowdfunding platforms. They could go even earlier before they prototype, go with the idea. But the issue here is that if you have, sorry, my presentation messed up a bit because it's converted from Keynote. The issue here is the idea and prototype are simple, are relatively simple, that everyone can sort of have an idea, oh, I wanted to build a phone that talks to my laptop and does this when I ride a bike. That sort of thing is easy if you know how the sensor works and then you have a basic understanding of building products. Small batch is not too difficult. The issue here is mass production. I was talking to the CEO of Foxconn about a week ago in Shenzhen, had a really deep conversation with him. He's been running Foxconn, the previous CEO. He's been running Foxconn for a long time. They do all the mass productions of your gadgets. We're talking Apple, Samsung, or whatever things that currently dominate in the world, they manufacture them. The issue for them, like I asked them, how many Kickstarter campaigns have you guys handled? What's your relationship? How do you like them or do you not like them? He told me, I'm sorry, when it comes to crowdfunding, you're raising like a million sort of scale. That is way too small, way too small for any company that's close to what we do, be able to accept your order. We don't care. You go for someone else. But the problem is that no one else has the ability to manufacture iPhones without being the help of Foxconn. That is the issue that 90% of Kickstarter's hardware facing. When they finish their campaign, take out their money, and they will jump on an airplane, they'll arrive at Shenzhen, they will spend 6 months, can't find any manufacturer there. And they spend all their money, and that leads to massive delays that we all know that scandals pops out on the website. The issue here lies around the mass production, because the difference of small batch or handmade prototypes can work. On a mass scale, it's totally different. It's very different. It's totally different subject, a totally different sort of methodology. It requires different thinking. It is not something that someone have no experience normally are able to solve that sort of issue. That's what I get from the Foxconn guy. That is the problem with the mass delay. Talk from another point of view about the way to stand out. There was once a period of time in the history when crowdfunding just started that you put any idea on crowdfunding platforms and there's money flowing to a certain extent, flowing into your campaign. But nowadays, people's bars are getting higher and higher. How to stand up from the general crowd, and then I sort of find a few different things that people normally use. So there's technology, there's innovation, there's brand story, there's design, there's marketing strategy, and also how much funds you actually raised. If you raise tens of millions, you're on the news already. So that does help it stand out a bit. This is what I found our Chinese projects normally tend to go for. It's very interesting when it comes to the different culture sort of perspective. They are very heavily emphasized on the technology. They're actually really good at technology, to be honest. And then they want the money. They want their project raise millions and millions of dollars to appear on the first news on TechCrunch. And then they do emphasize on a bit of marketing strategy, but not that much on the rest of design, branding, and innovation. This is what our Australian projects tend to look like. We're very innovative on the idea that we bring in, and we care a lot about design, how the product looks like, and we care about marketing strategy, how we're going to launch on the market and make everyone sort of talks about this. But we don't really think too much about technology, and we don't really care about how much funds that raised. I mean, not on the first sort of consideration sort of point. So that, as I said, I don't know where the future is. I don't know what crowdfunding for reward-based crowdfunding is going to go in the next 3 to 5 years. But there are a few thoughts that I can share with all of you, and also a few experiments that we already done that might work or not. First of all, this is a campaign shooting through, the application was sent through about a year and a half ago. It's a Melbourne-based musician called Tom Dickens. What he wants to do is an album. We found thousands of albums on the platform. To be honest, I don't feel anything about album anymore. When I saw his campaign, I was quite surprised because one of the things basically the campaign says, I want to record an album. I do not know what the title is. I don't know what song it's going to be in. I don't know what is the cover art it's going to be in. It's completely going to be a collaboration between me and the artist and people who support this particular project. It's a very interesting perspective. It sort of reflects back onto the sense of ownership that I talked before. I think that's what crowdfunding is different itself away from e-commerce. His campaign was very successful. He's offered rewards through the tiers of, send me support for $5. You can send me a picture of your childhood that I choose one to be the cover art of the album. And support me for $25. And then you can send me a piece of story. I might choose to write something out of it. So this is what crowdfunding interesting as make the project open, allow people to be part of it. That's what I think it's going to be strong. That's the gene of crowdfunding. It's going to be with us in the future. We experiment a bit with Deakin University on funding sort of research-based projects in Australia. It has been working very well, all sorts of like research-based projects that might be the future. Partly, although I don't believe a narrow sort of focused crowdfunding platform will work, to be honest. We tried with different models of crowdfunding. That's on Pozible. We have subscription-based crowdfunding. It never really worked very well. So basically, the way we brought it out have the functionality that you can actually choose to pledge $5 every month. So that system takes $5 off your credit card every month to sort of give it to the project creator. We thought it's going to be great for sort of subscription-based model business or projects. Never really worked that well. Private campaigns worked relatively well for us. We have a function that allows you to launch crowdfunding campaign, but not listed on the platform. So you can only send the URL to different people. They can only access the page via the actual URL. You can even put a password protection on it. And that works well for us. What we find is that people tend to use that, combine that together with normal crowdfunding campaigns. So they will launch their product a week as a private campaign, and then they'll give it to their existing audience of followers, and that they get the sort of special treatment of get to know this early before they open it up to the general public. Self-hosted campaign, that's a widget function. You can embed it completely onto your own website. So you run the whole crowdfunding on your own website, completely detached from Pozible as a platform. Does not work for us at all. We have a handful of them use. Basically, a lot of people like the idea. They like the complete ownership of branding. But when it comes to crowdfunding, they lose the audience that the platform built. So that doesn't really work for us either. We accept the Bitcoins as one of the first crowdfunding platform accepted, and it was great. We got great PR out of it, but not a lot of people actually use Bitcoins at all. Before I finish, I want to quickly touch on the investment crowdfunding. We've talked a lot about investment crowdfunding. We're not doing it in China. Australia will open up. I don't know if we're going to do it in Australia at this stage, to be honest. But my personal point of view, I don't think it's going to be a big deal. I don't mean it's not. I don't mean it does not have potential. The way that I look at it is that the current model of crowdfunding for investment pretty much are using technology to make the traditional investment sort of process easier for existing investors. That is not tapping into any new users or new sort of audience for new different ways of doing things. Basically streamline the process, and I don't believe that's going to make a dramatic change. For example, probably none of our existing user base on Pozible would be interested in that because they're not investors. They're people who follow art. They're people that sort of interested in supporting an initiative that do social good somewhere. They're not the ones that looking all different opportunities to make money. So from my point of view, if it's going to work, it's going to come from the grassroots up, not from the banking system or existing finance system down. And it's going to be a completely new model to disrupt the whole industry from the bottom up. And that's probably everything from me. All right, thank you very much.
I have one real quick. So this is a recurring problem with projects being overfunded on Kickstarter, have a huge number of orders to fill for their product, and there's always manufacturing delays.
Yeah.
So we've seen this a lot. Has there been some support manufacturing hubs or 3D printing industrial units or some sort of small scale manufacturing plants that can cater to this Kickstarter, Indiegogo, crowdfunding platform community? So anything that you've come across?
Unfortunately, at this stage, I think there isn't a good solution. To start with, that money is way too small for mass production of like gauges and hardwares in China. And there's a different landscape of manufacturers. There's a lot of manufacturers. You can find anything. People will take that. It's not a problem. But the issue is that the good quality are very high, and there's no sort of middle range, and then you get very low quality manufacturers. And then you want to try to avoid those ones. But there's ones that only is going to take your order on that scale. That is basically the reason for all delays, everyone. Yeah. Unfortunately, there isn't a good solution at the moment. The profit is not enough there.
My name is Irina. I present Russian crowdfunding platform Planeta, and I have a question for you. You have many projects on your platform. Do you help any image projects that you think that could benefit to your platform, maybe a personal manager or some PR, or do you have any additional conditions for such projects?
So the question is if we offer additional help and
services? If you have
services?
some projects that you are interested in, like from image side to your company, do you have any special conditions or special promotions of them?
All right.
Thank you.
I believe we operate slightly different from Chinese projects and overseas projects and non-Chinese projects. But in general, I think when you build a platform, it's very difficult to offer them hands-on individual sort of catered service. We don't do actual add-ons, like you can't pay us more to have the project listed on the front page or newsletter, that sort of thing. We don't do PR for you. We don't take that, unfortunately. And but we do that. We help that a lot in China, but not in the West sort of side of things. If that's what you're interested in, yeah. One of the things that I think for the Chinese market, if that's what you're looking at. Traditionally, if you look at the traditional, the Silicon Valley companies entering China, they have a huge, tremendous history and tradition of failing in the Chinese market. The reason, from my point of view, is very simple. They come into China with a very high sort of, we're very successful in Silicon Valley, and you change your behavior to use my product. No, that shouldn't be the way you build products for a market. You go in there and you knock it down from the very first break, and you build a product for the market. If you don't respect the market, don't even go in. Yeah.
Joe. Hi, I'm Jonathan, and I run the Crowdfunding Collective. So I also do the marketing stuff, and it really bears a lot of, I can identify what you're saying. But I just want to ask you, from your experience in the Chinese market, are there any special, are there any things that we should take note of when it comes to marketing campaigns to the Chinese consumers?
Yeah.
Is there anything special, like local narratives, or local stories that you have come across?
Yeah. One of the important things is that Chinese people like to look good in the general market. It's very important. And so when you market something, you want it to look big. And you want you wanted to make the people who believe in you or they choose your product to look good. So that normally requires quite a bit of a branding side of things. For example, if you have a high-end collaborators or partners, that normally works well. And or spend big budget to sort of go for high-end advertising that sort of gets the brand alignment a lot higher. That's probably one of the, and definitely try to use Chinese to tackle the audience of their own. That's easier. I've faced a lot of this similar issue. When I was there, I happened to be at an event that I think the new VP of Uber was in town in Shanghai. Was talking about how Uber is changing the world of Chinese taxis. But everybody knows that the Chinese companies is killing Uber like hell there in the Chinese market. But when you have someone from the US sort of holding the massive big decision power there, it's already difficult for them to compete.